dealer, I'm out of the game. If you are the healer, means I'm broken and lame. If thine is the glory, then mine must be the shame. You want it darker, we kill the flame. Magnified, sanctified be thy holy name. Vilified, crucified in the human frame. A million candles burning for the help that never came. You want it darker. Hey, nay, nay, nay. I'm ready, my lord. There's a lover in the story, but the story's still the same. There's a lullaby for suffering and a paradox to blame. But it's written in the scriptures and it's not some idle claim. You want it darker, we kill the flame. They're lining up the prisoners and the guards are taking aim. I struggled with some demons, they were middle class and tame. I didn't know I had permission to murder and to maim. You want it darker, hey, nay, 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 nay. I'm ready, my lord. Magnified, sanctified be thy holy name. Vilified, crucified in the human frame. A million candles burning for the love that never came. You want it darker, we kill the flame. If you are the dealer, let me out of the game. If you are the healer, I'm broken and lame. If thine is the glory, mine must be the shame. You want it darker, hey, nay, 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 nay. Hey, nay, 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 nay. I'm ready, my lord.
In the without grace, an appetite for expensive taste. They made the angels in her mold, feels at home in a centerfold. Don't try lines and don't try jokes, sheets of men like Hall & Oates. There's no tricks that you can try, there's no gifts money can buy. Put your hands up before she turns and walks away. This is your one shot, time for your race in the hole. Put your hands up before she turns and walks away. This is your one shot, time for your race in the hole. Time for your ace in the hole. Put your quarters in the slot, hope and pray for a jackpot. Better chances with the dice, to take her home with you tonight. She doesn't bother finding love, there's no man that's good enough. The lucky sevens come up eights, the rabbit's feet won't help your fate. Put your hands up before she turns and walks away. This is your one shot, time for your race in the hole. Put your hands up before she turns and walks away. This is your one shot, time for your race in the hole. Time for your ace in the hole.
Welcome back, everybody, to No Martini, No Party. Tonight, I'm joined by two very special guests. In fact, we've been talking about this interview for a while. Yeah, Paulina and Lal, welcome.
Hi.
How do you feel being on radio?
It's very interesting.
So, as I said, we were talking about this interview for a while, so I feel like making the intro once again. So before starting the show, and I feel it's especially important to reiterate this now for this episode, I want to clarify that this is not a journalistic or investigative piece on the countries and our cultures we're talking about. This isn't Model UN, and none of my guests or I should be considered as representatives of our nations or of our cultures. What this program wants to do is bring together people from different cultures and walks of life and give them a platform for them to share their thoughts, experiences, views, stories, music, and whatever else comes out in this hour. So yeah, again, thank you so much for being on. We've been talking about this interview for months now. For our listeners who might not know who you are, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Lillian. I'm 20, born and raised in Turkey. I moved to Birmingham at 18, and I've been living here ever since, and I don't really have any intentions of moving back to Turkey, so.
No nostalgia at all.
That's for starters.
Yeah, so hello, my name is Paulina. I've been in England for a while now. I moved here when I was about 11 years old, but my family lived in Russia majority of the time up until last year, so I kind of been back and forth. But yeah.
All right, fair enough. We're going to have a little bit of a musical break. First of all, the first two songs that were played were You Want It Darker by Leonard Cohen and Paulina's recommendation.
It's Ace in the Hole.
Advance, Ace in the Hole by
Yep.
Saint Motel. Which, amazing song, great choice. And this next song that's going to be played is Thin Ice by Leatherette. Enjoy. And we're back.
Hello.
Hello. So yeah, thank you guys so much for the recommendations. And let's get right into it. So, despite the geography of the two countries, there is a lot in common. So I'm wondering, with the philosophical question that brings this whole show together, that's the birth of the show, what does it mean to you girls to be Russian and to be Turkish, also considering the commonalities of the two countries that have a complicated relationship with Europe, especially given what went on last century, and given the fact that it's a country which is half Europe and half Asia, and two countries that are two totalitarian regimes. I mean, we're going to get into it throughout the show, but given this context, what does it mean for you girls to be Turkish and to be Russian?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think it's quite hard to summarize it.
Yeah.
It means different things to everybody. Like, for me, being Russian is having the upbringing in Russia, being, like, following the traditions and being very, very close to your family. One thing that in Western Europe I don't think is that important to people, you know? But, yeah, it's a lot of history. It's a lot of specific bits about your upbringing that nobody else can understand unless the person was grew up in the same environment. Is usually post USSR countries that really like Russian speaking. Turkey, I feel like there is a lot of similarity there, but it just in terms of like from simple things, from like the cartoons that you watch when you're little to kind of like values, cultural values, familial values that you have, is very, very different from here. Mm-hmm. And so when you do come here, it is quite a moment of trying to integrate into the society and trying to understand how the first 10 years, the first 20 years of your existence is completely different experiences to what people had in the UK, and you'll never understand them and they will never understand you.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think when I think about like being Turkish, I know everyone feels this way about their nationality, but Turkey it's very homey. And I feel like you could say the same thing about Russia, where like your community is very important, your friends, your cousins. I feel like people here are a lot more individualistic, and I feel like that's one of like the bigger like culture shocks that I had. Everyone just looks out for themselves and only themselves. You can like have like a very, very close friend here and there, but there's not much sense of a community here as it does in Turkey, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I miss.
Do you feel like this sense of community, of family, this, I guess, sense of solidarity comes as a result of being a student, or anyways being in opposition or being, a dissident to a certain extent of a country that has a totalitarian regime? How do you feel like that has influenced your experience?
Great question. I think I actually never thought about that, but that makes so much more sense the more I think about it. I feel like there's a sense of community that brings you together against a government that, like, we were just talking about being apolitical back in the bar, and, like, I feel like politics, again, like, brings you together. There's always something that you can talk about. There's always something that you can bond over, and I feel like here people are not as political and they don't have as strong beliefs enough to make them pull each other together. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think when you share similar opinions, it's more likely. I don't think it's necessarily bringing you together within the culture that you're already in, but it's almost making it like a subgroup within the people that you're around. So, and the less people who are have the same opinion as you, the closer the group becomes, and the less that you're able to discuss what you want to talk about, the less you're able to, like, the more closer you become. That's what I mean. Because obviously when you have certain people saying that you're not allowed to say this, or like whatever, your opinion is going to get you in trouble, you're going to only trust a small group of people. So that small group of people become a lot closer to you and a lot more important to you than anyone else around, because there's a whole new level of trust of being able to share those opinions with them.
And we were talking about this before as well, but how strongly do you feel this sense of hierarchy that there is in Europe? And I'm talking about Europe as a very Mediterranean Europe and Central Europe. Do you feel like, especially in a university it's international, and I'm coming from it as an Italian who has a lot of Central European friends. Do you feel as I was saying, how strongly do you feel the hierarchy that there is, or do you perceive any hierarchy between Eastern Europeans and Western Europeans? Because as you were saying, of course, because of, I guess, a neoliberal society, there's a lot more individualism. So I guess that there is this massive, yes, cultural difference, but also a difference in how maybe an Anglo-Saxon country views you or perceives you or treats you.
I've never felt that sense of hierarchy between Mediterranean European countries. Balkans, not once. The cultures are very similar. I mean, Turkey in some sense is a Balkan country, but Spain, in my short time where I lived there, I felt so at home. I don't know.
Was it maybe because I guess this is also
the culture is very similar
of Latin countries being very, I guess, homely and very welcoming. I mean, that's also the stereotype. I mean, not so much a stereotype, but I guess a way of being
a part of the culture.
Yeah, exactly. Even for Italy, I mean, despite the politics not showing it, being very xenophobic, but of, for example, Italians, the stereotype of being very welcoming, and I imagine it's the same thing for Spaniards.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've never felt that hierarchy or discrimination, if you will, for Mediterranean countries. But definitely I feel the norther you go, the more, the different it gets. I have friends, I think she's actually listening right now from the Netherlands, and I don't know, it's always quite interesting to see how different our experiences have been. I quite feel even in England, it's not far off from the Netherlands, but still it's as European, it's as dissociative almost as it gets. But I don't know, Mediterranean Europe, not as much. Balkan countries, definitely not. But places like France, especially with the hijab ban and whatnot, it's you feel more alienated. Yeah,
maybe more Central European countries, I guess.
Yeah, possibly.
And I guess it's just how much the country knows and how much the country believes in stereotypes, because a lot of people are very welcoming, a lot of people are very open to listening to you, and a lot of people some other people have already made up a certain understanding of what they think you're supposed to be as a Russian person or as a Turkish person. They have such engraved stereotype about your country that they can't really let go of. But again, I don't think it depends on the country so much. I think it just depends on the person, and to how much exposure you had to different nationalities.
That's true.
And it varies. It really varies.
I think it also has a lot to do with the more heterogeneous a country gets, the more welcoming they're going to be of who you are and where you come from.
I think Birmingham is one of the nicest cities in the UK for other nationalities.
I fully agree with that.
There's so many second and third generation immigrants in the city that everybody knows that you can't just judge by the news coverage. Yeah. They know that everyone is a person. You just need to get I had so many pep talks from random strangers in Birmingham about how you're not supposed to be no matter what's going on, don't be ashamed of your nationality,
Yeah.
But then you go to areas of UK which is mostly British, and they don't have such a welcoming effect.
Of course, because of maybe the lack of exposure to different nationalities.
You know how they always say the norther you go, the more welcoming people are, which to some sense that is true, but it's almost mostly just limited to British people or maybe just white British people, and the souther you go, the more welcomed I felt, whereas North has more of a reputation of being the welcoming ones. But I don't know, I think Polly's really right in that sense. I feel like the more diverse the country gets and the more diverse the city gets, the more I find myself being welcomed in.
I guess that the question that comes to mind is, why did you guys decide to leave your countries? No, I mean, the question arises spontaneous because, of course, we wouldn't be talking about how welcoming a country is if we didn't actually go there.
Yeah.
So the question is, you decide to immigrate. I mean, in some cases, I imagine the decision is made for you, but why did you decide to move?
So in conclusion, why are you here?
Why are you here taking our jobs and our men and our land? Yes.
But
why don't you stay home?
But I don't know, that's such a huge question. Where do I even start? I mean, the economy, for starters, that is one of the big reasons. You just want to get out of there as soon as possible. But the other one is, like, it's just opportunities, mate. Like, there's a whole world out there in this country that, like, some people in Turkey barely even dream about because they don't even know that it exists. So I think it's just... Your parents send you out for better opportunities. Yeah. You travel, you migrate for yourself for better opportunities. I wish it never came to this, but it is the truth. Like, more than half of my friend group back in Turkey, they are currently international students all over Europe, some in America. I only have, like, a very handful friends who stayed in Turkey to continue their education. Most of them are eventually going to come back, I'm assuming, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I didn't really have much of a choice. I was sent here for education, and then I stay here. But the whole point of, with education, I truly believe that certain bits of Russian schools, Russian universities are so much more advanced than you can find in UK or the US. But who cares about a Russian diploma? What can you do with that?
Oh, it's the same in Turkey.
You get a diploma and you can't work anywhere except for a specific, like, handful of countries that you don't have the opportunity to progress in. Like, you become a doctor, you might have the best education in medicine, but at the same time you get paid so little. So what is even the point of getting this amazing degree if you can't progress in it? So yeah, I think it was a matter of coming here, getting an education, and then you can decide whether you can come back home or not. Well, for me, it's not really much of a choice of coming back home now, but at least this gives you such an opportunity of, you don't have to stay in the country that you're going to uni, and you suddenly have this whole world in front of you, and you go wherever you want to go, just as long as you do well enough.
One of my teachers, when I was a junior in high school, she was my film teacher, and she said something along the lines of, like, international education is just like the remains of colonization. And I was like, what is she going on about? Like, and I don't, for some reason I had, like, such a huge reaction to that inside of me. I didn't say that to her, but the more I think about it, the more I understand her. It genuinely, like, you look at IB, it's basically just colonization in the current world. You just recruit the smartest kids abroad, hoping to get them back to your country. And then, I don't know.
No, I feel the same way. I mean, I think that it's the brain drain. I mean,
that's what it is.
It's the lack of opportunity that is shown for young people in various countries, and I feel like a lot of non-English speaking countries, at least, like, where English isn't the primary language, suffer from that.
Yeah. Because
of sort of, like, the importance of English in the workplace, especially, like, after the Second World War. And it becomes just so important to sort of emigrate and go to countries where, you know, the American, to live the American dream, kind of, which is why, like, the immigration in the United States, and I guess here in England, which is our sort of closest relative. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I really relate to that, and I think a lot of the European and internationals that are here for a lot of the same reasons, because an English diploma is worth more than...
Exactly.
It might not even be the language majority of the time, it's just the name of the university. It's just the fact that a diploma in any other country doesn't stand out as much, or it might just not mean anything at all. Do you know how many people have to come, like they had to emigrate later on in their lives, and they had to redo their entire education just because no matter how good the education was, it just didn't count.
Like
in the
a
countries
lot
that
of
they
lawyers,
came
No, in fact, it didn't match up. Even though I feel like, I mean, this is the experience of a lot of friends of mine who went to the States and said that, oh, you know, they just glided through the American educational system, because it's even true that, like, as you were saying, there are great Russian universities, there are great Italian universities, and like the difference in the educational system, even in high school, just allows you to have this completely different and critical mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I came here, it was quite funny, really. I came here when I was 11 years old to boarding school, and I think up until I was 15, I didn't learn anything new. Really? I learned English properly, like, you know, before my English was very, very much broken. But except for English, I didn't learn anything. I actually just repeated over and over and over again the things that I learned back at home. So yeah.
That's so funny. Until you're 15.
For 4 years, I was doing the same math problems over and over again.
Well, to be fair,
guys, catch up.
Well, to be fair, God, this sounds so bad, but I don't feel like I've grown that much past high school. I mean, I've just been riding the wave of the Italian educational system. I mean, I know that I'm studying film and I'm studying something completely different, and maybe it's even a question of stereotypes, but I find myself still relying so heavily on how the Italian system formed me and how different it is, and better, according to me, to some extent, than the English one. So yeah, that's my experience. Another question that comes to mind is, do you feel, to an extent, that you represent your nation when you're abroad? We were talking before about survivor's guilt, of everything that goes on into a country that opposes a totalitarian regime, and you're not there in those fights. How do you feel about the idea of representing your nation? How do you feel, and if you want to go back to talking about the question of survivor's guilt?
I think that is literally the perfect way of describing it, because you grow up in a community, you grow up in a culture, and suddenly you leave, but you're still a part of that culture while still trying to adjust to a new one. So there's all these things happening in your home country that you know you can relate to, but you're not experiencing that as aggressively. Like, for example, inflation and economic crisis, of course, it affects me and my family as well, but me not as much. Like, when I'm going to Tesco, I don't think about, oh my god, these prices, because Turkey is way past that. Like, just a 50 quid inflation does literally nothing on me, but everyone's just losing their minds over it. So, oh my god, I got so off track. You asked me about if I'm a representation. I think I'm a great representation of Gen Z Turks, definitely. The older people, not as much, but I think currently a lot of Turkish people that are my age have a very similar mindset, and that mindset is hopefully to be free of a certain person.
We don't name names here.
No, we don't talk about specific names, but I think it's just everyone in the country that's around my age are just yearning for their youth that never quite happened because it was stolen away from us, which is so depressing to think about it like that. But I think I am a great representative in that sense.
Yeah, I don't really think I can represent Russia so well right now. I think, again, I was said this earlier, but Moscow is not Russia. I'm not from Moscow. So I can represent Moscow to a certain extent, but again, I left quite young. So I wish I could be a good representation, but sometimes it feels like I've been away for too long to represent one or the other. Obviously, I can't represent UK because I'm not from the UK, but at the same time, when you go back home, you're more you have a certain mindset, you have a certain just like daily life that is more equivalent to the UK.
Do you feel this dualism between, like, you know, leaving Russia early and entering the UK too late? Big air marks.
That must
do you
be
feel
so
like this?
hard.
Do you feel like this dualism enriches you, or do you feel like it shows your lack of something?
I think it does a little bit of both. It allows me to be more stable in the UK at this point of my life. It allows me to feel like I'm at home whenever I go to London or something, you know? Like, it gave me an opportunity of meeting so many people at a young age and forming, like, really strong friendships, especially with boarding school. You live with people, like, you're with them 24/7. It's really strong friendships. But on the other hand, it makes you feel like you're not fully from the country that you're from, because no matter how often you go back there, there's so many things that you have missed because you were here. Every single time anything significant happens, you want to be back there, but you can't. And even with family wise, like, when your family lives in a different country from where you live, and you kind of spend majority of the time here, some of the time there, you end up realizing how different the mentalities is between you and your family. And especially, like, with parents, you can always blame on, like, generational gaps and this and that, but when you see it in your siblings, you do realize it's mostly based on your geographical location. It's where you spend majority of your time at, it's the people that you're surrounded by. Those are the main factors of forming your understanding of both countries at the same time, you know.
You said something really interesting before, and it was that Russia isn't Moscow. Like, Moscow isn't the main representation of, like, the ordinary Russian. And I'm wondering from you too, can you elaborate on that? And so Moscow not being Russia, maybe Istanbul not being a representation of the entirety of Turkey. Like, how big is the divide?
I think Turkey is very similar to Russia in that sense, where every corner of the country is almost like a different culture in and of itself, mostly because it is home to so many different ethnic groups and so many different languages and backgrounds. So I genuinely don't think it's not as homogeneous as, like, Poland is, let's say.
Yep, I think it's in every country, the capital of the country is completely different to the rest of the country.
Oh, definitely.
It's just a matter of the divide is bigger. In bigger countries, the divide is stronger. In countries that, like, a tiny town is very much just a completely set of group of people, you know, than from the big cities. But I think with what I was saying, Moscow is in Russia, the same St. Petersburg is in Russia, is those two are the major cities that a lot of people almost, like, strive to come. So you have, like, a really big mix of people within the city already, and you have a mix of culture within the city because a lot of people just wanted to come here because you can progress within.
You get better work opportunities.
Yeah, better work opportunities, nicer areas to live. Like, you know, there's... Yeah, it's just...
More possibilities.
It's
more
the same in Istanbul. That
yeah.
was actually my dad's family, where he was born in another city called Van, which borders Iran. And when he was 12, his parents just decided, you know, we need to give our kids better opportunities in this city. And they migrated within Turkey, and I was born in Istanbul, so I can't really speak about, like, what's it like living elsewhere. But I grew up, like, listening to my grandma's stories, my dad's stories, and it's more different than you would think, but also, like, it's almost the same. I don't know.
I think it's one of those things, you know, I like in the US, actors think that they'll go to Los Angeles and they're going to achieve everything that they want with their career. Yeah. And it's that one of, like, false hopes. Yeah. Almost. Some people do achieve because there is opportunities and it's a very nice city. Like, if Moscow wasn't in Russia, it would be really, really nice. Like, it's a really nice city, but it would be an amazing one. But you would think that, like, you go there and suddenly your life is sorted, but then you come there and you realize how much more expensive it is, how there is actually a big crisis in terms of housing because everybody's moving there.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of resonates with England and London. And
Yeah, oh, definitely.
So is
definitely.
any capital is like this is just, I think, the scale of how different, because there is such a big gap in Russia between people who are poor and the 12% of one rich. Like, it's massive. It's really, really big. So I think it just shows on a next level of the differences of how it is to live in Moscow versus how it is to live in the rest of the country.
Perfect. Then we're going to leave it at that for now. We're going to go into a musical break. This next piece is Sabrina, I Am a Party by Fred again.
Oh, I love the song.
And we'll see you
love
guys
this song.
soon. Enjoy.
I know I should want to go. It's just not that much fun having fun when you don't want to have fun. I am a party inside of my head, inside of my house. So I don't want to go. I am a party inside of my head. It's just not that much fun having fun when you don't want to have fun. I am a party. I am a party inside of my head, inside of my home, wherever I go. I am a party inside of my head. I don't feel like someone that you know. I am a party inside of my head. So I don't wanna go.
looking around. I've been spinning in my head real fast, flipping dreams, staying on the scene. Low-fi, high-fi, you been a real friend from the first time. I've been underground, D-town, I've been in your hood. See me round, I be whipping no L's on me, yeah. Smoking green, eating greener. I've been getting older, getting meaner. You know, letting my love flow a little cleaner. Mistakes I make never wrong. Just a new lesson, maybe a new song. But you know, a bitch is learning. I'm just trying. I be learning from my mistakes. I be learning from my mistakes. I be learning from my mistakes. I be. Oh, so y'all not got honey. Learn my mistakes. I be learning mistakes. I be learning from my mistakes, baby. I know, you thought the song was over, but that's incorrect, because life keeps going on, and the energy never dies, does it? No, it doesn't. Ooh, that's why I remembered you from a month ago when you said hello to me. That's why I remembered you when you said hello about a month ago to me. I'm sorry it took so long for me to see, but the timing is right. The timing is right. You made sure I really didn't forget you, baby. Ooh. Hey.
And that latest track was Lessons from My Mistakes by Liv E.
That was
kindly
beautiful.
recommended by Taylor. And yes, before that, just because the song before that played, Sabrina, was just the most amazing recommendation from a friend of mine back home called Neb, who I send a massive hug to. God, I'm going to be back in Rome in less than a month, so I'll just hold on tight. But anyway, back to our interview. I feel like it would be unjust and sensitive even if, in the wake of what happened, and is still happening, for me not to talk about the big three-letter word.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun, the war. So, of course, being citizens of totalitarian regimes, and especially one in a conflict that has been going on now for, a year officially, how do you live the war? Because it was also term time when it started here in Birmingham, so how did you live it?
I freaked out the first 2 weeks, I want to say. Also, because the first week all the cards were blocked, and I used to have Russian cards. I didn't have any banks in the UK. Well, I had a bank, I just didn't have any money. So at first I really much freaked out and very much went broke. And then little by little you realize, you have to go on with your life. You've got to do whatever you can do. You have a massive guilt as being Russian of, this is my country, which is doing this, which is horrible. And I think the only thing that really helped me was just helping out with what I can, volunteering to collect supplies and send them off to Ukraine. And when they had massive trucks in Moseley here, they were collecting clothes and they were collecting medicine, and they were sending them off to Poland from where it went to Ukraine. And I think generally I couldn't really talk to a lot of people at that time. I was just pretty much keeping to myself. All of my friends at the time that I was really close with before were Russian speaking, and around those months, that's when I really couldn't talk to anyone else, except for those friends that understand what's going on. Because at first everybody would ask me so many questions, or it was either questions which felt better than somebody pretending like they know so much about the conflict and they know everything that's going on, and almost like teaching me about what's
in
happening.
fact, was it at all patronizing?
It was very much people coming up to you and saying, "Why didn't you stop this before? Why?"
Oh yes, a 21-year-old university student can stop.
That was a question which is quite a big question, to be fair. And on the internet going around, and like people just genuinely asking them, "Where were you in 2014 when the conflict with Donetsk first, like Donor and Eleanor regions of Ukraine first began, when the, Crimea was annexed, and so on?" And my answer to that was like, I was barely a teen. But at the same time, everyone who is Russian, who is Russian speaking, who's Ukrainian, knew that is happening. Like my dad is from Donetsk. I knew that it was happening. We had to move my grandma out of there, who really didn't want to leave. We only, after a year in 2015, we finally convinced her to go, because she was like, I'm not leaving my house. I'm not leaving where my husband is buried. Like, I'm going to stay here. And only when it got really bad, that's when she was like, okay, maybe I can move to Moscow now. Like, but so many people who have no idea that it was happening beforehand were coming up to you and telling you that you had so much time to sort this. Why didn't you sort it between, like, why didn't your country do more to sort it in between now and then? And it's one of those questions that you don't get to ask unless you lived under a totalitarian regime. Like, at that time, I felt the only people who are allowed to ask that, the only people who are allowed to be mad are Ukrainians. The only people that's allowed to, that can understand how it is to live under such dictatorships are Russians and Belarusians. That within Europe are the two main countries that can understand how it is to live under it. And at the same time, on top of all of it, I would hear from family, I would hear from friends and what they're going through back at home, and I have a lot of family in Ukraine as well, so I would hear what they're going through there. And all you feel is you just feel so guilty because you've got it good. Like, you're worried about it, but you're here. You're worried about it from the distance.
Yeah.
You're not actually there experiencing any of it, so it's not
As
in
you
your
were saying,
rights.
like survivor's guilt,
Yeah.
of course. No, I can't imagine, like, that must have been so tough, especially with the Russian-Ukrainian background and that just sort of splitting sort of dualism.
I mean, I grew up in Moscow, so, like, I've been to Ukraine a few times, and some of my family is from Ukraine, like, both of my parents. My dad is from Donetsk, my mom is from Western Ukraine, but they moved out when, they were born during USSR times, so they left before USSR broke up. And for them, I think when the war started, I just finally understood my dad in a way, because I saw, like, I'm closer with my mom, and I saw the way that she was worried about her family. She was worried about, like, the country that she lives in attacking her home. You know, is a hard thing to witness. And I understood that my dad has been experiencing those exact emotions for years now, and because nobody was covering it, like, it was so easy to put it out of sight, out of mind. I felt like a lot of Russians did it, a lot of Ukrainians did it. Like, it was happening, everybody knew that it was happening, but it was never resolved. But because it was such a small area, people tend to just move on with their lives. But for him and for his family, it was a constant present worry, because they're from there, and you know that war happens in the world, but you never experience it the way that you do when it's the country that you're from that is involved in it.
No, absolutely. And I guess one of the things that we were also talking about earlier was, I mean, it's impossible to be apolitical. I mean, it's impossible, I feel, for our generation, or be incredibly selfish for our generation to be apolitical, especially when these things happen. And as we were saying before, just coming from these kinds of countries, I mean, Turkey and of course the conflicts in last century, but even the totalitarian regime that it holds now, and Russia and the war that's still going on, how do you feel about an apolitical generation? Do you feel like our generation is is more political maybe than what our parents did? Do you have any hope for like?
I think being apolitical is inherently selfish, because being apolitical is being political to whoever is in the leading regime. I feel like whatever you do believe in, there are people who don't have a voice, and you're responsible for being that. As patronizing as that sounds, and I really don't mean it that way, but like, especially, we were just talking about like British politics. I don't get how a gay person can be apolitical, because you yourself, let's say a white gay man, you have more privilege than a black gay man would.
Of course, there is a hierarchy of oppression in that.
Of course. So you have all these ideologies that the Tory party holds. I feel like it's your responsibility to act accordingly, rather than getting lazy, just thinking about yourself and being like, you know what, I'm apolitical. But I don't think that's how it works, because being political is a means of survival, or at least it is in the country that I come from. You don't get to just sit back and be like, well, this doesn't concern me, because it concerns you. If it doesn't concern you directly, it concerns your mom, your dad.
I mean, somebody's
brother,
rights
your friend.
Somewhere.
Exactly. So I feel like, I don't know, I genuinely, maybe I'm being very close-minded about this, but I'm like, it's not even something that I'm willing to apologize on. Like, I feel like being political is very, very, very important, and I don't think people realize how important it is to have a say in the voting system.
Yeah, I think being apolitical is a privilege, but whether you're saying your opinion about politics out loud or you keeping it quiet is a matter of self-defense. So,
yeah, and I feel like if this episode leaves the listeners with anything, it's this, that it's incredibly selfish to not be politically involved, especially in this climate, and that, you know, no one is beyond salvation. As religious as that sounds, it brings you back. That's so true. All right. So as usual, thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you
me on
for
the show.
having us.
It's been lovely. It's been eye-opening, and yeah. Again, thank you
great.
so
Thank
much.
you,
This has been very lovely to talk about after a double gin and lemonade.
Oh,
I very much enjoyed that.
Shout out to Joe's Bar.
Yeah.
And this last song, as usual, goes out to Nick. And good night, everybody. Enjoy your sports night and enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye.